Bring in analyst and professor Yossi Mekelberg with Chatham House. He is live for us in Tel Aviv. Yossi, good to see you. Is it fair to say, even though we've been seeing violence frequently in this area, fair to say that none of this would have escalated to this point had Israeli forces not stormed the mosque twice?
Well, I'm not so sure about it. I think there was an escalation and something waiting to happen. I think, unfortunately, we see a repeat of this kind of situation, cases year after year, this time of the year. And as it happens, this year, Easter, Passover, and the holy months of Ramadan coincided at the same time. And unfortunately, there are extremists, I think, on both sides that are interested actually in inflaming the situation. Now, not to say there is no place for police and military to be in holy places. We don't want to see that. And I think everyone involved right now should calm the situation down and try to go back into celebrating these holidays. But at the same time, there is interest in different parts, including Hamas, but also at the time that there are extremist far-right Israeli government, and people talk about, again, celebrating and sacrificing part of Jewish rituals on Temple Mount. I think this is actually the time for both, all involved, including in the Middle East and in the Israelis and Palestine, to try to calm the situation down before it's getting out of control. Let me just say something additional. It's also an unusual situation because of the constitution crisis that Israel is going through, because of the very right government that is in Israel right now, and the fact that the 34 rockets that were fired from Lebanon changing a little bit the situation right now.
Yeah. Okay, so the people that were inside of Al-aqsa praying for Ramadan, were they only praying? No, they were protesting. Some of them had fireworks with them. But do you see any reason for Israeli forces to storm the mosque? Was it really necessary? Inevitably, that action was going to have bigger consequences.
Yeah, I have no doubt that storming with overreacting with this kind of power into a mosque is probably not the cleverest of moves. And you're right. There is at the same time trying to protest, and sometimes dealing with protests. The smarter move is to let protests to go on without using too much force, and then it's peters away. But unfortunately, this is not always the way that the Israeli security forces are dealing with that. I can't say that I know exactly the details, how it pans out on Temple Mount. But again, I think it's very important for all sides involved, which means, the Israeli government, the PA, the Jordanian kingdom, all to be involved to try to calm situation down and try to avoid exactly this kind of situation, because we know what happens year after year. And 2 years ago, it ended almost in all-out war between Israel and Hamas in Gaza, and also with violence in the mixed cities in Israel. This year, we see also the involvement of Palestinian groups in southern Lebanon, which most definitely there were not Hezbollah forces, but nothing happens like this in Lebanon without the blessing of the Hezbollah.
Of course. Yossi, why is there not room for Palestinian worshippers to use the space with some restrictions, and for Israelis to use the space with some restrictions? Why wouldn't that be worth it to keep the peace?
Again, in ideal world, which unfortunately is the situation right now, and I'm actually, as it happened, I'm right now in Israel. Yeah, I would expect that actually all the faiths will celebrate together, and I think that's why there is a need for peace agreement. There is need for the renewal of the peace process of some sort. But realistically, this is not going to happen, because instead of the situation between all the sides controlled by those who are seeking peace, the situation is controlled right now by the most extremists on both sides. And then exactly what we see. It also shows that it's not enough to have a political dialogue about future relations between Israelis and Palestinians, and generally between, again, Jews and Muslims. There must be also and Christian as well, but must be also a religious dialogue which will deal exactly with the same thing. That one day we'll see everyone celebrates together and worship together peacefully there, but we are so far from it because there is hardly any dialogue, and when there is no dialogue, it creates a vacuum, a power vacuum that ends with those extremists entering into it and with using force. And in the case of what happened in the Mosque, power overreaction by the Israeli security forces.
All right, Yossi, really good to talk to you. Thanks so much.